The water bottle was empty. Completely, impossibly empty. Vanessa Chen stood in the pristine locker room of Apex Fitness, holding the transparent blue plastic container up to the fluorescent lights, like it might reveal some hidden truth. She'd filled it exactly 23 minutes ago at the fountain near the free weights. She knew because she'd checked her watch, the way she checked everything, measuring her life in precise increments of time and efficiency. The bottle had been full to the brim, cold water beading condensation on the outside. She'd taken exactly 3 sips, maybe 4 ounces total. Now it sat bone dry in her hand, as if she'd never filled it at all. She pressed her thumb against the screw-top cap, testing for looseness. Sealed tight. She ran her fingers along the seams, searching for cracks or splits in the plastic. Nothing. No leak. No spill. No wet spot on the wooden bench beside her gym bag. The water hadn't dripped onto the tile floor. It hadn't soaked into her towel. It had simply vanished, defying every law of physics she'd learned in her undergraduate engineering courses. Vanessa shook her head, a sharp, dismissive gesture that sent her blonde ponytail swinging. She was being ridiculous. There had to be a rational explanation. Maybe she'd drunk more than she thought. Maybe the bottle had been less full than it appeared. Maybe she was so dehydrated from this morning's cardio session that she'd unconsciously drained it without registering the action. The human brain did strange things when pushed hard enough, and Vanessa had been pushing very hard lately. She tossed the bottle back into her canvas gym bag with more force than necessary and checked her watch again. 6:27 in the morning. 3 minutes until her standing appointment with the only personal trainer at Apex who'd agreed to accommodate her demanding schedule. Twice a week, 6:30 sharp. No exceptions barring actual medical emergencies. Vanessa liked rules. She liked structure. She liked showing up precisely on time with her workout gear arranged just so, her form perfect from years of disciplined practice, her fitness goals documented in a color-coded spreadsheet that tracked every rep, every set, every incremental improvement in her performance metrics. What she decidedly did not like was the new guy the gym had hired to cover her regular trainer's unexpected medical leave. His name was Jordan Pierce, and he'd been filling in for the past 2 weeks while her usual trainer recovered from emergency gallbladder surgery. Jordan was everything Vanessa's previous trainer wasn't. Loose where she needed rigid structure, conversational where she preferred focused silence, constantly adjusting her carefully calibrated routine like she hadn't been training consistently and intelligently for 3 solid years. He was also, objectively speaking, extraordinarily attractive in a way that irritated Vanessa more than it should have. 6'2" with the kind of lean, powerful build that came from a lifetime of disciplined athletic movement rather than vanity-driven gym posing. Dark brown eyes that tracked every microscopic hesitation in her form with unnerving accuracy. Strong, capable hands that gestured expressively when he explained biomechanics concepts she already understood. A voice that stayed maddeningly calm and patient, even when she snapped at him, which had happened more than once in their brief professional relationship. During their first session together, Vanessa had been meticulously polite. Professional. She'd explained her training history, her current goals, increasing her squat 1 rep max to body weight, improving her mile time by 15 seconds, reducing her body fat percentage by 2 points, and provided documentation of her injury history, which included a minor rotator cuff issue from 2 years ago and chronic IT band tightness that she managed with regular foam rolling. Jordan had listened attentively, nodding in all the right places, taking notes on his clipboard with what appeared to be genuine interest. Then he'd said, "Cool, let's see where you're actually at," and proceeded to watch her warm-up sets with an analytical focus that made her skin prickle with awareness. After 3 sets of bodyweight squats, he gently interrupted her planned progression to point out that her squat depth was inconsistent, varying by nearly 3 inches between reps, and that she was compensating for a mobility limitation in her right ankle by shifting her weight onto her left side. Vanessa had bristled immediately. "My form is fine. I've been doing these for years." "Your form is good," Jordan had corrected mildly. "But good isn't optimal. You've developed a compensation pattern that's putting unnecessary stress on your left knee and lower back. If we don't address it now, You're going to have problems down the line." She'd wanted to argue. She'd wanted to tell him that she knew her own body, that she'd done the research, that she didn't need some random substitute trainer who smiled too much and made too many jokes during sets to mansplain biomechanics to her. Instead, she'd taken a deep breath and said in her most professionally cool tone, "I appreciate the feedback, but I'd prefer if we kept this professional. I don't need a cheerleader or a life coach. I need a trainer who respects that I understand my own body and training needs." Jordan's expression had flickered, something that might have been amusement or might have been understanding. She couldn't quite tell. "Absolutely," he'd said. "Professional works for me. But part of my professional responsibility is pointing out issues before they become injuries. So I'm going to keep doing that, whether you like it or not." And he had. Every session since then, Jordan had identified some flaw in her technique, some muscular imbalance, some mobility restriction she'd been unconsciously working around. Each observation was accurate, annoyingly so, backed up by video evidence and biomechanical explanation. Vanessa couldn't dismiss them as wrong, which made them even more frustrating to hear. If you're watching this story wondering how it's going to end, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's listening to this journey unfold, because it gets complicated from here. Now, Jordan was waiting for her in the training area near the back corner of the gym, the section reserved for personal training clients and serious lifters. He stood beside the cable machine setup, clipboard in one hand and a bottle of water in the other, wearing a fitted black athletic shirt with the Apex Fitness logo embroidered on the chest. The shirt emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the defined musculature of his arms in a way that Vanessa absolutely refused to notice or acknowledge. His expression when he saw her approaching was one of calm readiness mixed with something that looked suspiciously like he found her perpetual intensity amusing rather than off-putting. "Morning, Vanessa," he said, his voice warm and professionally friendly. "Ready to work?" "Always," Vanessa replied, setting her gym bag down on the designated bench and pulling her resistance band from the side pocket with practiced efficiency. She avoided meeting his eyes directly, focusing instead on the familiar routine of preparation. "Are we sticking with the split from last week, or did you decide to completely overhaul my programming again?" She heard the edge in her own voice and winced internally. That had come out more hostile than she'd intended. Jordan, predictably, didn't react with defensiveness or irritation. He simply consulted his clipboard and said, "Actually, I want to make a modification based on what I observed Thursday. Your right side is compensating significantly during unilateral movements. We're going to focus on single leg and single arm work today, and I want to film your set so you can see what I'm seeing." Vanessa's jaw tightened reflexively. "I don't compensate. I've been training balanced progressions for 3 years. Everyone compensates," Jordan said, his tone matter-of-fact rather than condescending. "It's not a character flaw or a training failure. It's basic biomechanics and neurology. Your body takes the path of least resistance, and if one side is stronger or more mobile than the other, it'll shift the load accordingly. Happens to everyone, including me." He set his clipboard down and picked up his phone, already positioned on a small tripod aimed at the cable machine. "I'm not trying to criticize your work ethic or your dedication. I can see you've put in serious time and effort. I'm trying to help you train smarter so you don't end up injured and sidelined. That's my job. That's what being professional means to me." Vanessa wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself against the implicit suggestion that her training had been anything less than intelligent and well-researched. But the gym was steadily filling with early morning regulars, and she absolutely refused to have a debate about training philosophy in front of an audience. So she nodded once, sharp and tight, and followed him to the cable machine. Jordan handed her his phone, screen already showing the camera app in video mode. "I'll cue you through the movement. Don't overthink it. Don't try to correct anything mid-set. Just move the way you naturally move, and we'll analyze afterward." The exercise was a single-arm cable row, something Vanessa had performed hundreds of times over the years. She set up in the standard athletic stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, core braced, spine neutral. Jordan selected a moderate weight, lighter than she typically used, and stood off to the side where he could observe her movement pattern without blocking the camera angle. "Whenever you're ready," he said. 15 reps, controlled tempo, full range of motion. Vanessa pulled. The first rep felt smooth and controlled, exactly like it should. The second felt the same. By the 5th rep, she could feel her right shoulder blade retracting slightly more than her left. By the 10th, she was aware of a subtle shift in her hip position, a microscopic forward tilt that she'd never consciously noticed before. She completed all 15 reps with technical precision, or what she thought was technical precision, and carefully returned the cable handle to its resting position. Jordan retrieved his phone and replayed the video in slow motion, zooming in on specific frames. When he turned the screen toward her, Vanessa felt her stomach sink. The compensation pattern was obvious once she saw it externally. At the point of peak contraction, her right hip shifted forward approximately 2 inches. Her torso rotated slightly to the left, and her shoulder elevated toward her ear instead of staying packed and stable. She was loading her back extensors and upper trap instead of her lat and rhomboids. Everything she thought she'd been doing correctly was actually reinforcing a dysfunctional movement pattern. "See that?" Jordan's voice was gentle, without any trace of "I told you so" smugness. "Right there. Your body's trying to recruit stronger muscle groups to compensate for weakness in the primary movers. You're essentially doing a different exercise than the one you think you're doing." Vanessa stared at the screen, her throat tight with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Frustration, certainly. Embarrassment at having been so wrong about her own technique. But underneath that, something deeper and more uncomfortable. The realization that she'd been training hard for years without actually addressing her underlying weaknesses, just building elaborate compensations around them. "It's fixable," Jordan added, his tone pragmatic and reassuring. "Completely fixable. But we need to regress the movement temporarily, reduce the load, and rebuild the pattern from scratch with proper motor control. It's going to feel awkward and slow at first, like learning to walk again. But if you commit to the process, you'll be significantly stronger and more resilient 6 months from now." Vanessa wanted to thank him. The words were right there, ready to be spoken. Instead, she just nodded and said, "Show me the regression." They spent the next 40 minutes working through a progression of exercises so basic they bordered on insulting. Band pull-aparts, wall slides, prone Y raises with 1-pound dumbbells. Jordan coached each movement with meticulous attention to detail, his hands occasionally hovering near her shoulder blade or lower back to cue proper positioning without actually touching her unless she gave explicit permission. His voice stayed calm and encouraging throughout, praising small victories. Perfect, that rep was exactly right, and gently correcting errors before they became ingrained patterns. By the end of the session, Vanessa's upper back and shoulders were burning with the kind of deep metabolic fatigue that came from actually working the right muscles instead of compensating around them. Her shirt was soaked with sweat. Her ponytail had come partially loose, wisps of blonde hair sticking to her neck and forehead. She felt simultaneously exhausted and strangely energized, the way she always felt after truly productive training. "Good work today," Jordan said as she gathered her belongings. "I know that was frustrating. Regressing is always harder psychologically than progressing. But you showed up and did the work without ego getting in the way. That's what separates good athletes from great ones." Vanessa grabbed her water bottle from the bag and twisted the cap off, ready to drain whatever was left. Empty. Again. Completely bone dry, as if she'd never filled it at all. She frowned and turned the bottle upside down, shaking it. Not a single drop. "You okay?" Jordan asked, noticing her expression. "Yeah," Vanessa said, forcing her voice to stay casual. "Just need to hydrate more. I keep forgetting to refill this thing." But that wasn't true. She hadn't forgotten. She distinctly remembered filling it in the locker room before the session, and now, 23 minutes later, it was empty without any logical explanation. Jordan studied her face for a moment, his dark eyes perceptive in that unnerving way of his. Then he said, "Make sure you're drinking enough water, especially if we're increasing training intensity. Dehydration affects everything: strength, focus, recovery, mood. Your body needs that resource to function." "I know," Vanessa said, more sharply than intended. "I'm not a beginner." "Didn't say you were," Jordan replied mildly. "Just making sure you're taking care of yourself. I'll see you Thursday, same time." Vanessa left the gym feeling unsettled in ways that had nothing to do with the humbling training session. The water bottle sat in her bag like an accusation, its emptiness inexplicable and vaguely threatening. She told herself she was overthinking it, that there had to be a rational explanation, that stress and sleep deprivation were probably making her paranoid and forgetful. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, Vanessa suspected something was fundamentally wrong. The rest of Friday unfolded with the relentless clockwork precision that characterized Vanessa's professional life. She worked as a senior project coordinator for Blackwell & Associates, a mid-sized commercial real estate development firm with offices in the financial district downtown. Her role involved orchestrating the complex logistics of large-scale construction projects, coordinating between architects, contractors, city planning departments, and investors, ensuring that timelines stayed on track and budgets stayed within parameters. It was demanding work that required exceptional organizational skills, meticulous attention to detail, and the ability to manage competing priorities without losing composure. Vanessa excelled at it precisely because she approached her career the same way she approached her training, with systematic discipline, clear goals, and an unwillingness to accept mediocre results. Her workspace reflected this philosophy. The corner desk she'd earned through 3 years of consistent performance was immaculately organized. Color-coded file folders, dual monitors displaying synchronized project management software, a physical inbox that she cleared completely every evening before leaving. The only personal items were a small succulent plant that required minimal maintenance and a framed photograph of herself completing her first half marathon, arms raised in victory as she crossed the finish line. At 11:30, her manager Deborah knocked on her cubicle wall and gestured toward the conference room. "Got a minute? Want to loop you in on something?" Vanessa saved her work and followed Deborah into the glass-walled conference room where 2 senior partners, Gerald Blackwell himself and Patricia Nguyen, who headed the firm's urban development division, were already seated. The atmosphere felt formal but positive, the kind of energy that preceded major announcements rather than performance reviews. "Vanessa," Gerald began without preamble, "we've been impressed with how you handled the Riverside Commons project. You brought it in 2 weeks ahead of schedule and 8% under budget, which is exceptional given the supply chain issues we were dealing with this quarter." "Thank you," Vanessa said, keeping her tone professionally modest while internally cataloguing every strategic decision that had contributed to that success. Patricia leaned forward, hands folded on the polished conference table. "We want to offer you lead coordinator position on our biggest upcoming project, the downtown mixed-use development on 3rd and Maple, $42 million budget, 18-month timeline, high-profile client, high-profile location, significant regulatory complexity. It's the kind of project that makes or breaks careers." Vanessa's pulse accelerated despite her outward composure. This was it, the opportunity she'd been systematically working toward since her first day at the firm. The kind of project that came with a promotion to senior coordinator, a substantial salary increase, and a clear path toward eventual partnership. "What's the expected time commitment?" she asked, because that mattered more than money or prestige. "Significant," Deborah said bluntly. "You'll be working closely with the design team, the general contractor, and multiple city departments. Expect 60-hour weeks during critical phases. Late meetings, weekend site visits, constant availability for crisis management. For the next 18 months, this project will essentially be your life." 60-hour weeks, constant availability. The words should have triggered hesitation, maybe even resistance. Instead, Vanessa felt a familiar surge of competitive energy. This was what she'd trained for, metaphorically and literally. This was what all the early mornings and late nights and disciplined sacrifice were building toward. "I can handle it," she said with absolute certainty. Gerald smiled, the expression slightly predatory in the way successful business leaders often were. "We know you can. That's why we're giving it to you. We'll need your preliminary project scope by end of day Monday. Patricia will send over the client files and regulatory documentation this afternoon." "Understood," Vanessa said. "Thank you for the opportunity." She left the meeting riding a wave of adrenaline and immediately texted her best friend Simone. "Got the downtown project. This is huge." Simone's reply came within seconds. Congrats! Drinks tonight to celebrate? Vanessa hesitated, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Drinks meant social time, which meant hours she could be using to review project documentation and start building her strategic approach. She typed, "Rain check. Want to get ahead on prep." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "You're impossible, but I'm proud of you. Go conquer the world or whatever." Vanessa smiled and pocketed her phone, then spent the rest of the afternoon immersed in the initial project files Patricia had forwarded. The development was ambitious: mixed residential and commercial space, sustainable design certifications, complex zoning variance requirements, multiple stakeholder groups with competing interests. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes, multi-layered challenge that made her feel most alive. She worked through lunch, sustained by black coffee and the electric focus that came from having a clear, meaningful goal. At 6:30, when most of her colleagues were packing up and heading home, Vanessa was still at her desk, building preliminary timelines and identifying potential regulatory bottlenecks. At 8:30, the office cleaning crew arrived. At 10:15, her eyes finally started burning from screen fatigue. She gathered her things, locked her workstation, and took the elevator down to the parking garage. The drive home took 20 minutes through light evening traffic. Her apartment was a tidy 1-bedroom in a recently renovated building, 3 miles from both her gym and her office. Strategic location chosen to minimize commute time and maximize efficiency. She ate a protein-heavy dinner while standing at her kitchen counter, too wired to sit down properly. She reviewed her training notes from that morning's session with Jordan, analyzing the video evidence of her compensation patterns and feeling that same uncomfortable mix of embarrassment and determination. She showered, set her alarm for 5:15 and fell into bed at 11:40. And then she dreamed. In the dream, she was at Apex Fitness, but the space looked different. Dimmer, emptier, the equipment strange and unfamiliar. Jordan was there, standing in the training area near the cable machines, wearing the same black shirt he'd had on that morning. But instead of holding a clipboard, he held her water bottle, the transparent blue plastic catching non-existent light and glowing faintly. "You're not paying attention," he said, his voice echoing in the empty gym. "I am," Vanessa protested. "I'm doing everything you said." "Not to me," Jordan replied. "To yourself. You're ignoring the signals." "What signals?" He held up the water bottle. It was full, then empty. Then full again, the water level fluctuating impossibly. "Your body's trying to tell you something, but you keep pretending you can push through anything with enough discipline." "I can," Vanessa said, but even in the dream her voice lacked conviction. Jordan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "What are you so afraid of?" he asked softly. "I'm not afraid." "Liar." He reached out and touched her shoulder, and the contact sent electricity racing down her spine. His hand was warm and solid and grounding, and Vanessa realized with sudden, overwhelming clarity that she wanted him to keep touching her, wanted to lean into that contact and let someone else carry some of the weight for once. Then the dream shifted abruptly, the way dreams do, and she was alone in the empty gym with the water bottle in her hand, draining impossibly fast no matter how tightly she sealed the cap. She woke at 3:17 in the morning, heart pounding, sheets twisted around her legs, the dream's unsettling intimacy still clinging to her consciousness like morning fog. She didn't go back to sleep. Saturday and Sunday blurred together in a haze of project preparation. Vanessa spent both days at her apartment, laptop open on her kitchen table, reviewing architectural plans and building code requirements and contractor bid proposals. She took breaks only for meal prep and a single 90-minute training session at Apex on Saturday afternoon, timing it specifically to avoid Jordan's schedule. The water bottle remained in her gym bag, empty and accusatory. She didn't refill it. She didn't want to watch it drain mysteriously again, didn't want to acknowledge that something impossible was happening in defiance of logic and reason. By Sunday evening, she had a comprehensive preliminary scope ready for Monday's presentation. Timeline breakdowns, resource allocation, risk assessment, stakeholder communication strategy. It was thorough, professional, exactly the kind of work that would justify the partner's faith in her. It was also exhausting. Vanessa fell asleep at her desk at 9:30 Sunday night and woke at midnight with her cheek pressed against the keyboard, her neck aching from the awkward angle. She dragged herself to bed and slept fitfully, troubled by fractured dreams of empty water bottles and Jordan's perceptive dark eyes and a voice saying, "You're not paying attention," over and over until she wanted to scream. Monday morning brought her regular 6:30 session with Jordan. Vanessa arrived at the gym 10 minutes early, tired and jittery from too much coffee and too little sleep. She changed into her training clothes mechanically, moving through the familiar routine like a robot, executing programmed commands. The water bottle sat at the bottom of her gym bag, and she deliberately left it there. Jordan was already in the training area when she arrived, setting up equipment for what looked like another corrective exercise session. He glanced up when she approached, and something in his expression shifted, a subtle tightening around his eyes that suggested concern rather than criticism. "Morning," he said. "You look tired." "I'm fine," Vanessa replied automatically. "Just busy weekend." "Busy working or busy resting?" "Working." Jordan frowned slightly but didn't push. "Okay, well, today's focus is—" "Can we just train?" Vanessa interrupted, her tone harsher than she intended. "I don't need conversation or coaching philosophy. I just need to work." The words came out more hostile than she'd meant, born from exhaustion and stress and the unsettling dreams she couldn't shake. Jordan's expression flickered, something that might have been hurt, quickly masked by professional neutrality. "Sure," he said evenly, "we can do that." They trained in near silence for the next 40 minutes. Jordan called out exercises and counts, corrected her form when necessary, but didn't attempt any casual conversation or educational explanations. The session felt mechanical and cold, and Vanessa hated it, even as she recognized that she'd been the one to create this uncomfortable distance. When they finished, Jordan said, "Same time Thursday?" His voice was carefully professional, stripped of its usual warmth. "Yes," Vanessa said. Then, forcing herself, "Sorry for being short with you. I'm under a lot of pressure at work right now." Jordan's expression softened marginally. "It's okay. Everyone has bad days. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself, yeah? Pressure doesn't go away by ignoring your body's needs." Vanessa nodded, grabbed her bag, and left without further conversation. She hated how guilty she felt. She hated that she cared about his opinion of her. She hated that she'd dreamed about him twice now, dreams that felt far too intimate and revealing for comfort. Most of all, she hated that he'd been right. She wasn't taking care of herself. She was grinding the way she always did, pushing harder instead of smarter. And something inside her, something her conscious mind couldn't quite grasp, was screaming for attention in the only way it could, by making water disappear from sealed containers like a poltergeist with a very specific agenda. Monday at work was a whirlwind. Vanessa presented her preliminary scope to the partners, received enthusiastic approval, and immediately dove into the next phase of planning. She fielded calls from contractors, negotiated with the design team about sustainable materials sourcing, and started the complex process of navigating city planning department requirements. She worked through lunch again, through dinner. By 8 o'clock Monday evening, her vision was blurring from screen fatigue and her hands were trembling slightly from too much caffeine and too little food. Her phone buzzed. Text from Simone. "Haven't heard from you in days. You alive?" Vanessa typed back. "Alive. Swamped. Talk soon." Simone. "That's what you always say. Then I don't hear from you for 2 weeks." Vanessa stared at the message, guilt twisting in her stomach. Simone was right. This was the pattern. Vanessa would get focused on something, work project, training goal, personal challenge, and everything else would fall away until she'd isolated herself completely. She started typing an apology, but her hands were shaking too much to hit the right keys. She set the phone down, closed her laptop, and sat in her empty office trying to remember the last time she'd had an actual conversation with anyone that wasn't about work or training. She couldn't. That night, she dreamed about Jordan again. In this dream, they were at the gym. But she was lying on the mat doing the recovery work he'd suggested Friday. Foam rolling, stretching, releasing tension. His hands were on her shoulder blade, guiding the movement, and his voice was low and calm. "You carry everything here. All the stress, all the weight. You need to let it go." "I don't know how," Vanessa heard herself say. "Yes, you do," Jordan replied. "You just don't give yourself permission." His hands moved to her shoulders, pressing gently, and Vanessa felt something inside her chest crack like ice breaking. She woke Tuesday morning with tears on her face and no memory of why she'd been crying. Tuesday's training session was different. Jordan had her doing pure mobility and breath work, nothing that resembled traditional exercise. He guided her through a series of stretches and breathing patterns designed to down-regulate her nervous system, speaking in that same calm, grounding voice from her dream. "You're living in sympathetic overdrive," he explained. "Fight-or-flight mode all the time. Your body thinks it's constantly under threat, so it's dumping cortisol and adrenaline into your system, which impacts everything: sleep, recovery, mood, immune function. You have to give yourself permission to downshift occasionally." "I'm fine," Vanessa said automatically. "You're grinding yourself down," Jordan corrected gently. "There's a difference between challenging yourself and destroying yourself. One builds you up, the other breaks you." Vanessa wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She could feel it. The way her heart was racing even during a recovery session, the way her hands trembled slightly, the way her sleep was fragmented and unsatisfying. She was destroying herself in slow motion, and some part of her was trying desperately to get her attention before she collapsed completely. After the session, Jordan said, "Can I ask you something?" "Okay. What are you running from?" The question landed like a physical blow. Vanessa's throat tightened. "I'm not running. I'm working toward goals." "Those aren't mutually exclusive," Jordan said. "You can have goals and still be running from something you don't want to face. You don't know me." "I know what I see," Jordan replied. "I see someone who's brilliant and disciplined and incredibly hard on herself. I see someone who equates rest with failure and vulnerability with weakness. And I see someone who's terrified of what might happen if she stops moving long enough to actually feel what she's feeling." Vanessa felt exposed, flayed open, every defense stripped away by his quiet perception. She wanted to leave, wanted to tell him he was overstepping professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "What if I stop and there's nothing there?" Jordan's expression softened with something that looked like understanding mixed with compassion. "Then you build something new, but you can't build on a foundation that's crumbling from exhaustion." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Vanessa said, "I need to go," and left before he could respond. She spent Tuesday afternoon in back-to-back meetings, pushing through exhaustion on pure willpower and coffee. She stayed at the office until 11. She went home, fell into bed fully clothed, and slept for 4 hours before her alarm jolted her awake for her Wednesday morning session with Jordan. Wednesday was the day everything changed. Vanessa arrived at Apex at 6:15, moving through the empty gym like a ghost. She changed in the locker room, her movements mechanical and numb. She pulled her water bottle from her bag. She'd filled it Tuesday night before bed, determined to prove to herself that the disappearing water was just stress-induced paranoia. The bottle was empty. Vanessa stared at it, her heart hammering. She'd filled it. She was certain. She'd filled it to the brim, sealed the cap, and watched it sit on her kitchen counter for 10 minutes to verify the water wasn't draining or leaking. The bottle had been full when she packed her gym bag. Now it was bone dry, as if it had never held water at all. Something inside Vanessa snapped, not in the dramatic, explosive way of a breakdown, but in the quiet, inevitable way of a structure finally succumbing to stress it was never designed to withstand. She sat on the locker room bench, still holding the empty bottle, and felt tears start sliding down her face. She cried silently, shoulders shaking, while the gym slowly filled with early morning clients. She cried for the exhaustion she'd been ignoring, and the isolation she'd been cultivating, and the desperate, unsustainable pace she'd been maintaining. She cried because water was disappearing from sealed bottles, and she didn't understand why, and her logical, analytical mind couldn't make sense of anything anymore. She didn't know how long she sat there. Eventually, there was a quiet knock on the locker room door. "Vanessa," Jordan's voice, careful and concerned. "You okay? We were supposed to start 10 minutes ago." Vanessa wiped her face roughly and stood, the empty water bottle clutched in her hand. She opened the door. Jordan took one look at her tear-streaked face, and his expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Hey," he said softly. "What's wrong?" "My water keeps disappearing," Vanessa said, and her voice sounded hollow and strange. "I fill it and seal it, and it just disappears. And I don't understand why. And I'm so tired, Jordan. I'm so tired and I don't know how to stop." She held up the bottle like evidence, like proof of her unraveling sanity. Jordan looked at it, then at her, and said, "Let me see that." She handed it over. He examined it thoroughly, checking the cap, looking for leaks, holding it up to the light. Then he said, "Stay here," and disappeared into the training area. He returned 2 minutes later with his own water bottle, a small digital scale from the gym's equipment closet, and his phone. "I want to try something," he said. "Do you trust me?" Vanessa nodded, too wrung out to do anything else. Jordan filled both water bottles at the locker room sink, sealed them carefully, and weighed them on the scale, showing Vanessa the results. 24. 3 ounces for hers, 24. 1 ounces for his. Then he set them side by side on the bench and started recording video on his phone. "Let's wait," he said. "If something's happening, maybe we can catch it." They stood together in awkward silence, watching 2 water bottles sit motionlessly on a wooden bench like this was the most normal thing in the world. 2 minutes passed. 3. 5. At the 7-minute mark, Vanessa saw it. Not with her eyes. Her eyes saw nothing. But she felt it. A subtle shift in the air, a coldness that raised goosebumps on her arms. The locker room's fluorescent lights flickered once, briefly, and the water in her bottle dropped by half an inch. Jordan saw it too. His eyes widened. He moved the phone closer, adjusting the angle for better clarity. They watched in absolute silence as the water level in Vanessa's bottle steadily decreased, not dripping, not leaking, simply vanishing, while Jordan's bottle remained completely unchanged. Within 3 minutes, Vanessa's bottle was empty. Jordan stopped the recording and replayed it in slow motion. On screen, the water simply diminished, defying physics, with no visible explanation for where it was going. "That's impossible," Vanessa whispered. "I know," Jordan said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking slightly as he held the phone. "But it's real. It's on camera. We both just watched it happen." They stared at each other. Then Jordan said, "We need to talk, not here. After your session. There's a coffee place 2 blocks from here. Meet me there at 8. Vanessa nodded, numb and unmoored. They went through the training session in a daze, both of them too distracted to focus properly. Jordan kept glancing at his phone, rewatching the video like he couldn't quite believe what he'd captured. Vanessa moved through exercises mechanically, her mind spinning through impossible explanations. At 8 o'clock, they sat across from each other in a quiet corner of Common Grounds Coffee, 2 untouched lattes cooling on the table between them. Jordan had his laptop open, and he'd been scrolling through research articles for 20 minutes while Vanessa sat in silence, trying to process reality breaking down around her. "Okay," Jordan finally said. "I found something. It's going to sound insane, but hear me out." "More insane than water disappearing?" Vanessa asked, her voice flat with exhaustion. "Maybe." Jordan turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed an academic article titled "Psychokinetic Phenomena and Stress-Related Manifestations." There's documented research, actual peer-reviewed studies, about something called recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. It's sometimes called poltergeist activity. Vanessa stared at him. "You think I'm causing a poltergeist?" "I think extreme stress and repressed emotional energy can sometimes manifest as physical phenomena," Jordan said carefully. "It's rare, very rare. But there are documented cases going back decades. The researcher who coined the term found patterns. The phenomena usually center around a specific person experiencing high stress. They're involuntary and unconscious, and they typically involve small-scale disturbances of physical objects." That's not possible, Vanessa said. That's pseudoscience. That's not how reality works. We just watched water disappear from a sealed bottle, Jordan reminded her gently. We watched it happen. We have video evidence. So either the laws of physics suddenly stopped applying or something else is going on. Vanessa's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table to hide the tremors. Why would this be happening to me? The research suggests it's usually unconscious, Jordan said. Your mind trying to externalize stress or get your attention when you're ignoring internal signals. The phenomena typically stop when the underlying stressor is addressed or when the person develops healthier coping mechanisms. So what? I'm supposed to just… what? Meditate until my water bottle works properly again. Jordan closed his laptop and looked at her directly. I think you're supposed to stop destroying yourself. I think you're supposed to acknowledge that you can't sustain this pace indefinitely. I think your subconscious is basically screaming for attention in the only way it can. Vanessa felt tears threatening again. I don't know how to stop. Let me help you, Jordan said. That's what I do. I help people find balance. Not just physical training, but actual holistic wellness. Let me help you figure this out. Why do you care? Vanessa asked, her voice breaking. I've been nothing but hostile to you. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I recognize what you're going through. I've been there. When I was playing college basketball, I pushed myself so hard that I blew out my knee my senior year. Not from a single incident, but from chronic overtraining and ignoring every warning sign my body sent. I spent a year in physical therapy, and my therapist told me something I've never forgotten. Your body will always tell you what it needs. The question is whether you're listening. I'm not listening, Vanessa whispered. I know, Jordan said gently, but you can start. They sat in silence while Vanessa processed. Then she said, What do I do? First, you need rest. Real rest, not just physical inactivity. You need to scale back at work, set boundaries, stop operating in crisis mode 24/7. Second, we modify your training to focus on recovery and nervous system regulation, not just performance improvement. Third, we address the emotional component, therapy, journaling, whatever works for you. And fourth, you let yourself be human, imperfect, vulnerable, normal. I don't know if I can do that. You don't have to do it perfectly, Jordan said. You just have to start. Vanessa looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she'd been too defended to notice before. He wasn't trying to fix her or change her or impose his methods on her. He was offering partnership, support, a steadying presence while she figured out how to stop falling apart in slow motion. Okay, she said finally. Help me. Jordan smiled, warm and genuine. Already started. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa's life transformed in small, uncomfortable ways. Jordan met with her 3 times a week, once for modified training focused purely on movement quality and nervous system downregulation, twice for what he called integration sessions that involved breathwork, meditation, and honest conversations about her relationship with control and achievement. She started seeing a therapist Jordan recommended, a woman named Dr. Lisa Harding, who specialized in high-achieving professionals struggling with burnout. The first session was brutal. Dr. Harding had listened to Vanessa's carefully constructed narrative about work pressure and training goals, then said bluntly, "What are you really afraid of?" Vanessa had tried to deflect, to intellectualize, to maintain the professional distance she'd built around her entire personality. Dr. Harding had simply waited, patient and unwavering, until Vanessa finally cracked and whispered, "I'm afraid that if I'm not exceptional, I'm worthless." The tears had come then, ugly and cathartic, releasing years of accumulated pressure, and Dr. Harding had said gently, "Where did you learn that?" The answer, Vanessa had realized, went back to childhood, to a father who'd left when she was 10 because he couldn't handle the responsibility, to a mother who'd worked herself to exhaustion, keeping them afloat, and had told Vanessa repeatedly, "You have to be twice as good to get half as far," to a lifetime of internalizing the message that her worth was conditional on her achievements, that rest was weakness, that needing help meant failure. Understanding didn't fix everything, but it created space for something new to grow. At work, Vanessa had an uncomfortable conversation with Deborah about bandwidth and boundaries. She'd admitted that she'd overcommitted, that 60-hour weeks weren't sustainable, that she needed support if the downtown project was going to succeed without destroying her in the process. Deborah, to her credit, had listened thoughtfully and agreed to assign an additional junior coordinator to the project team. The water bottle stopped draining. 3 days after Vanessa started actually implementing rest and boundaries and emotional processing, she filled her water bottle at the gym, sealed it, set it down, and watched it remain completely stable and normal for 20 minutes straight. Jordan had filmed it as evidence, then shown her the contrast with the earlier videos. "Your subconscious got the message," he said. "You're listening now." "This is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me," Vanessa said. "Agreed," Jordan replied. "But effective. You actually made changes." As the days became weeks, Vanessa found herself looking forward to her sessions with Jordan in ways that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with him. The way he listened without judgment, the way he challenged her assumptions without making her defensive, the way his presence felt simultaneously calming and energizing, like she could breathe deeper when he was around. She also noticed other things: the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he demonstrated movements, the way his hands were careful and sure when he adjusted her positioning, the way his smile transformed his entire face, warm and open and genuine, in a way that made her chest ache. She started dreaming about him almost nightly. Not stressful dreams anymore, but intimate ones. Dreams where they were doing ordinary things, making coffee, watching movies, talking about nothing important, but everything felt charged with potential. Dreams where he touched her shoulder and she leaned into the contact, craving closeness she'd never allowed herself to want. She woke from these dreams confused and unsettled, because she didn't do this. She didn't develop feelings for people. She didn't let herself want things that complicated her carefully structured life. But Jordan had slipped past her defenses somehow, and now she couldn't stop noticing him, couldn't stop wanting more than professional distance. One Thursday morning, after an especially good training session where Vanessa had finally nailed a movement pattern she'd been struggling with for weeks, Jordan said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Okay," Vanessa said, suddenly nervous. "Why did you tell me to keep it professional that first day?" Vanessa felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I thought you were going to be one of those trainers who treats clients like they're fragile or incompetent. I wanted you to take me seriously." "Did you think I wasn't taking you seriously? I thought you were going to try to change everything about how I train because you knew better." Jordan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I did want to change things, because I could see patterns that were going to hurt you eventually. But I wasn't dismissing your knowledge or dedication. I was trying to help you train smarter." "I know that now," Vanessa said softly. "I'm sorry I was so hostile." "You weren't hostile," Jordan said. "You were protective. There's a difference." He was standing close enough that Vanessa could smell his faint cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his skin. She looked up and found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Something between curiosity and affection, like he was seeing past every defense she'd ever built. "What?" Vanessa asked, self-conscious under the intensity of his gaze. "You're different now," Jordan said. "More present, less tightly wound. It looks good on you." "I feel different," Vanessa admitted. "Scared sometimes, but different." "Scared of what?" "Of not knowing what comes next. Of not having everything planned and controlled. Of wanting things I don't know how to handle." Jordan took a half-step closer, closing the distance between them to inches. "Like what?" Vanessa's heart was hammering. She could feel the electric charge in the air between them, the potential hanging unspoken. She could walk away right now, keep it professional, maintain boundaries, go back to the safe, solitary life she'd built. Or she could take a risk. "Like you," she whispered. Jordan's expression shifted, surprise and pleasure and something deeper flickering across his face. "Vanessa, I know it's complicated," she said quickly. "I know you're technically my trainer, and there's probably ethics rules, and I'm probably making this weird, but I need you to know that I think about you constantly, that I dream about you, that you've become the best part of my day, and it scares me how much I want more than just professional sessions." Jordan exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath. Then he said, "I think about you too." "You do?" "All the time," Jordan said. "From that first session where you told me to keep it professional, and I thought, okay, this one's going to be challenging and interesting and probably drive me insane. I've been trying to maintain appropriate boundaries because that's what ethical coaching requires. But you're not just a client to me anymore." "What am I?" Jordan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with one warm, steady hand. "Someone I care about. Someone I want to know beyond training sessions and coffee shop conversations. Someone I think about when I should be focused on other things." "What do we do about that?" Vanessa asked. "We address the ethics issue first," Jordan said practically. "I'll officially transfer your training to another coach at the gym. No conflicts of interest, no power imbalance. Then, if you still want to, we figure out what this is between us." "I want to," Vanessa said immediately. Jordan smiled, that warm, transformative smile that made her insides flutter. "Good, because I want to too." He didn't kiss her, not yet. Instead, he dropped his hand and stepped back to professional distance, creating space for the practical logistics to unfold properly. "Let me talk to the gym manager today. I'll recommend Marcus. He's excellent and his style will work well with where you are now in your development. Then maybe we could get dinner tomorrow night. Actual dinner, as two people who aren't trainer and client." "I'd like that," Vanessa said. They completed the session with a new kind of tension humming between them. Not stress or conflict, but anticipation. When Vanessa left the gym that morning, she felt lighter than she had in months, like she'd set down weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. That afternoon, Jordan texted, "Talk to management. You're officially transferring to Marcus starting next week. So, still interested in dinner tomorrow?" Vanessa typed back, "Very interested." Jordan, "Great. I'll pick you up at 7. Dress casual. I want to take you somewhere that doesn't require performance or perfection." Vanessa, "I don't know how to do casual." Jordan, "I'll teach you." The transition happened smoothly. Vanessa met with Marcus the following Tuesday for an assessment session, and he was everything Jordan had promised: skilled, attentive, completely professional. The training was good, but it wasn't Jordan, and Vanessa found herself missing his presence in ways that confirmed what she already knew. This wasn't just about training anymore. Their first actual date was at a small Ethiopian restaurant Jordan loved, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and family-style serving, and food eaten with your hands using injera bread as utensil. It was messy and informal, and completely outside Vanessa's usual controlled environment, which was exactly Jordan's intention. "You're allowed to be imperfect here," he said, as they tore off pieces of injera and scooped up spiced lentils and tender meat. "You're allowed to get sauce on your hands and laugh and enjoy something without analyzing it." Vanessa tried. It felt foreign and uncomfortable at first, like wearing clothes that didn't fit right. But Jordan was patient, telling her stories about his family and his college years and the injury that had redirected his entire career path. He made her laugh with his impressions of difficult clients and his self-deprecating accounts of training mistakes he'd made early in his career. And slowly, incrementally, Vanessa felt herself relax. Not completely, that would take time, but enough to actually enjoy the moment without constantly thinking 3 steps ahead. "Tell me about your family," Jordan said as they finished their meal. Vanessa hesitated, then spoke honestly. "My dad left when I was 10, no explanation, no goodbye, just gone one day. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us housed and fed, and she basically destroyed her health doing it. She died of a heart attack when I was in college. Stress-related, preventable if she'd taken care of herself. I think that's why I'm so obsessed with control. If I can just work hard enough, plan well enough, be disciplined enough, then nothing bad will happen. But that's not how life works," Jordan said gently. "I know," Vanessa said. "Intellectually, I know. But changing what you believe emotionally is harder than changing what you know logically. That's why you need people," Jordan said, "to remind you that you don't have to carry everything alone." They talked for 3 hours, long after they'd finished eating, until the restaurant staff started politely stacking chairs around them. Jordan drove her home, walked her to her door, and said, I had a really good time tonight. Me too, Vanessa said. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for taking the risk, Jordan replied. Then, slowly, telegraphing his intention clearly, he leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle and brief, just a soft press of lips that sent electricity racing through her entire nervous system. When he pulled back, Vanessa heard herself say, "Would you like to come in?" Jordan smiled. "I would, but not tonight. I don't want to rush this. I want to do it right." "What does right look like?" "Taking our time," Jordan said, "building trust, learning each other, making sure this is real and sustainable, not just attraction or convenience." Vanessa felt a wave of relief mixed with disappointment. "Okay, that sounds healthy and mature." "I know," Jordan said, laughing. "Terrible, right? But I think we're worth doing properly." He kissed her once more, lingering this time, before saying goodnight and walking back to his car. Vanessa went inside, closed the door, and leaned against it with a grin she couldn't suppress. For the first time in her adult life, she was allowing herself to want something that wasn't tied to achievement or performance. She was allowing herself to be vulnerable with another human being, and it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next 3 months unfolded gradually. Vanessa and Jordan dated properly, dinners, movies, long walks through the city, weekend trips to nearby hiking trails, where Jordan taught her to appreciate movement without performance metrics. He met Simone, who immediately loved him, and told Vanessa privately, "About time you found someone who could keep up with you." Vanessa met Jordan's family, his parents, his 2 younger sisters, his nephew who worshipped him. They welcomed her warmly, and Jordan's mother pulled her aside after dinner one evening and said, "He talks about you constantly. I haven't seen him this happy in years." "He makes me happy too," Vanessa had replied. "He makes me feel like I can just be myself without having to earn it." The downtown project progressed smoothly, with the additional support Vanessa had requested. She worked hard but not destructively, maintaining boundaries and actually leaving the office at reasonable hours most nights. Her performance reviews were excellent. Her stress levels were manageable. The water bottle sat on her kitchen counter, normal and mundane, filled and emptied in completely predictable ways. Training with Marcus went well, though Vanessa couldn't help occasionally missing Jordan's particular brand of perceptive coaching. But she was making progress. Her movement patterns cleaner and more efficient, her recovery better, her relationship with fitness shifting from punishment to genuine enjoyment. And through it all, her relationship with Jordan deepened in ways that surprised her. He challenged her assumptions without making her defensive. He called her out when she slipped into old patterns of overwork or perfectionism, but with compassion rather than criticism. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen. 4 months into their relationship, Vanessa woke from a dream about Jordan. But this time, instead of the intimate tension that had characterized earlier dreams, she dreamed they were simply sitting together on a couch, his arm around her shoulders, watching rain through a window. It was peaceful, comfortable, the kind of ordinary intimacy she'd never allowed herself to want. She rolled over and found Jordan already awake, propped on one elbow watching her. They'd been staying at each other's apartments regularly for the past month, slowly blending their lives together in practical, meaningful ways. "Good morning," he said softly. "Morning," Vanessa replied. "I was dreaming about you." "Good dream or weird dream?" "Good," she said. "Really good. We were just existing together. No drama, no crisis, just being." Jordan smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's my favorite kind of dream." "Mine too," Vanessa said, and she realized, with quiet certainty, that it was true. 6 months after that first disastrous training session, where she'd told him to keep it professional, Vanessa and Jordan moved in together. They found a 2-bedroom apartment with good light and space for both their lives. Jordan's training equipment, Vanessa's home office setup, a kitchen they could actually cook in together. The water bottle sat on their kitchen counter now, a strange relic from a strange time. Sometimes Vanessa would look at it and remember how desperate she'd been, how close to breaking completely. She'd asked Jordan once if he regretted getting involved with a client who'd been manifesting poltergeist activity from stress. He'd laughed and said, "Are you kidding? That's the most interesting relationship origin story I've ever heard. Plus, It got your attention when nothing else would. I'm grateful for that weird, impossible water bottle." Vanessa had smiled and kissed him, and in that moment, she'd felt something she'd never quite experienced before. Contentment. Not the adrenaline rush of achievement or the satisfaction of meeting a goal, but genuine, sustainable contentment with where she was and who she was becoming. The downtown project completed successfully 18 months after it began. Vanessa received her promotion to senior coordinator and a significant salary increase. More importantly, she received recognition for having managed a complex, high-stakes project while maintaining work-life balance and supporting her team effectively. "You've changed," Deborah had said during her performance review. "A year ago, you would have ground yourself into dust to deliver results. Now you deliver the same quality results while actually taking care of yourself and your team. That's the mark of true leadership." Vanessa had thanked her and left the meeting feeling proud in a way that was different from her old achievement-driven satisfaction. This pride came from growth, from learning to work sustainably rather than destructively. Jordan opened his own studio 9 months after they moved in together. He called it Foundation Fitness, and his tagline was, "Building strength from the inside out." The space was small but thoughtfully designed, focusing on one-on-one training and small group classes that emphasized the connection between physical movement, mental health, and emotional well-being. Vanessa helped him with the business planning and marketing strategy, bringing her project management skills to bear on something that mattered deeply to both of them. She watched him work with clients, patient, perceptive, genuinely invested in their holistic well-being, and fell in love with him all over again. One evening, almost exactly a year after their first date, Jordan came home from the studio looking thoughtful. They were making dinner together, Vanessa chopping vegetables while Jordan seasoned chicken, moving around each other with the practiced ease of cohabitation. "I was thinking about something today," Jordan said. "What's that?" "Remember when you first told me to keep it professional?" Vanessa laughed. "Hard to forget, I was so defensive." "You were protective," Jordan corrected, as he always did. "But I was thinking about how that request actually shaped everything that came after. You set a boundary and I respected it. That established trust. And then when things got weird and impossible, we had that foundation to build on." "Are you saying you're glad I was kind of hostile to you?" "I'm saying I'm glad you knew what you needed and asked for it," Jordan said, "even if what you thought you needed wasn't actually what you needed." Vanessa set down her knife and turned to face him fully. "What do you think I needed?" "Someone who would see past your defenses without pushing too hard. Someone who would challenge you to take care of yourself without making you feel weak for needing support. Someone who would stick around when things got weird and impossible." "That's a very specific job description," Vanessa said, smiling. "Lucky I was qualified," Jordan replied. He kissed her then, and Vanessa felt the same electric warmth she'd felt that first time outside her apartment door, only deeper now, grounded in months of trust and vulnerability and genuine partnership. "I love you," she said when they broke apart, the words coming easily now where once they would have terrified her. "I love you too," Jordan said, "even when you're being professionally hostile." "I'm never professionally hostile anymore," Vanessa protested. "True," Jordan admitted. "Now you're just occasionally personally difficult, which is much more endearing." Vanessa laughed and returned to chopping vegetables, feeling lighter and more grounded simultaneously. This was what balance felt like, she realized. Not perfect equilibrium, but the ability to shift and adjust and recover. Not control, but adaptability. Not isolation, but interdependence. 2 years after the water bottle incident, Vanessa stood in the Foundation Fitness studio after hours, helping Jordan reorganize equipment and update his client scheduling system. It was late, after 10, and the space was quiet and dimly lit. Just the two of them and the familiar smell of rubber mats and cleaning solution. "Hey," Jordan said suddenly, "come here." Vanessa walked over to where he was standing near the cable machine, the same type of equipment, where he'd first filmed her compensation patterns, where everything had started to shift. He pulled something from his pocket, and Vanessa's breath caught. It was a small velvet box. "I know this is going to sound manipulative," Jordan said, "but I need you to hear me out before you respond, okay?" Vanessa nodded, unable to speak. "I love you," Jordan said. "I love your intensity, and your discipline and your fierce determination to do everything excellently. I love that you challenge me and push back when I'm wrong and refuse to settle for less than you deserve. I love that you've learned to rest without guilt and be vulnerable without shame and let people in without losing yourself. I love watching you grow and supporting you through hard things and celebrating your successes." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "I love you enough to want to build an entire life with you. Not someday, not eventually. Now, will you marry me?" Vanessa felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't the desperate, overwhelmed tears from 2 years ago. These were tears of joy and relief and profound gratitude that she'd been brave enough to let someone see her falling apart and help her rebuild into something stronger. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes." Jordan slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did, because he was Jordan, and he paid attention to details like ring size and favorite foods and the exact things she needed to hear when she was struggling. He pulled her close and kissed her, and Vanessa wrapped her arms around him and held on tight, feeling anchored and free simultaneously. "I have a confession," Jordan said when they finally broke apart. "What?" "I bought this ring 6 months ago. I've been carrying it around waiting for the right moment." "This was the right moment," Vanessa said. "Here where everything started changing. Where you first saw me as I actually was, instead of how I wanted to appear. This is perfect." They sat on the mat together, leaning against each other, talking about logistics and timelines and what kind of wedding they wanted. Vanessa realized she didn't have strong opinions about most of it: flowers, music, venue, which would have stressed her out 2 years ago, but now just felt like freedom. The only thing that mattered was the commitment itself, the choice to build a life together. "Small wedding," she said, "immediate family and close friends. Nothing elaborate or stressful." "Whatever you want," Jordan agreed. "As long as I get to marry you, I don't care about the details." "That's my line," Vanessa said, laughing. They stayed in the studio until midnight, planning and dreaming, and simply being together. When they finally left, Vanessa noticed the water bottle sitting on the training room counter. She'd started keeping one at Jordan's studio for when she visited. She picked it up. Full, normal, completely mundane and predictable. "Remember when this thing was basically haunted?" she said. Jordan smiled. "Best poltergeist activity ever. Brought us together." "You're ridiculous," Vanessa said, but she was smiling too. They got married 4 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden, surrounded by 30 of their closest family and friends. Simone was Vanessa's maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Jordan's nephew was the ring bearer and took the job very seriously. Vanessa's mother wasn't there, but Vanessa felt her presence anyway, and she knew her mom would have been proud of the woman she'd become. Not because of her achievements, but because she'd learned to live instead of just perform. During the reception, Simone cornered Vanessa and said, "I need to know the full story. Jordan mentioned something about a haunted water bottle." Vanessa laughed and told her everything: the disappearing water, the video evidence, the research about stress-induced psychokinesis, the gradual unraveling and rebuilding of her entire approach to life. Simone listened with wide eyes and said, "That is the wildest thing I've ever heard. And also the most you thing possible. You literally stressed yourself so hard that you bent the laws of physics." "I prefer to think of it as my subconscious trying to save me," Vanessa said. "Well, it worked," Simone replied. "Look at you now. Married to someone amazing, thriving at work, actually taking care of yourself. I'm proud of you." "Thank you for not giving up on me," Vanessa said, "even when I was impossible to reach." "That's what friends do," Simone said, hugging her tight. "We stick around even when it's hard." The first year of marriage was an adjustment, like all first years, full of negotiation about shared space and different habits and learning to truly merge 2 lives. But Vanessa and Jordan had already done the hard work of building trust and communication, so the adjustments felt manageable rather than overwhelming. Vanessa continued thriving in her career, taking on increasingly complex projects while maintaining the boundaries she'd established. She made partner at the firm 3 years after the downtown project. the youngest partner in the company's history. But the promotion didn't define her the way she once thought it would. It was an achievement, yes, but not the sum total of her worth. Jordan's studio flourished, developing a reputation as the place to go if you wanted training that addressed the whole person rather than just physical performance. He hired 2 additional trainers who shared his philosophy, and the space became a small community of people supporting each other's growth. And through it all, the water bottle remained normal, mundane, predictable. Just a plastic container that held water like every other water bottle in the world. Until one evening, 3 years into their marriage, when Vanessa was facing a particularly stressful deadline at work and had fallen back into old patterns, working late, skipping meals, pushing too hard. She came home exhausted and dehydrated, grabbed her water bottle from the kitchen counter and took a long drink. The water tasted strange. Not bad, just strange. She looked at the bottle. It was empty again. Completely empty, despite having been full 5 minutes ago when she'd refilled it. Vanessa stared at the bottle for a long moment. Then she started laughing. She laughed until tears ran down her face, until Jordan came into the kitchen looking concerned. "What's so funny?" he asked. She held up the bottle. "It's empty again." Jordan's eyes widened. "You're kidding." "Nope. Apparently my subconscious is still paying attention and doesn't like when I slip back into bad habits." Jordan took the bottle from her hand and set it on the counter. Then he pulled her into a hug. "Message received. You're working too hard again." "I know," Vanessa admitted. "This deadline has me stressed and I'm falling into old patterns." "What do you need?" Jordan asked. "Help," Vanessa said simply. "I need help. I need to delegate some of this work. I need to take tomorrow as a mental health day. I need to remember that I'm allowed to struggle without having to be perfect." "I can help with all of that," Jordan said. "But first, let's get you some water that actually stays in the bottle." He refilled the container while Vanessa watched, amused and exasperated and grateful all at once. The water stayed put this time. Her subconscious had made its point. Over the next few days, Vanessa made adjustments, delegated tasks to her team, took a day off to rest and reset, had an honest conversation with her managing partner about workload distribution. The water bottle returned to normal, and Vanessa returned to balance. "I think that's always going to be your early warning system," Jordan said one evening as they cooked dinner together. "When you start pushing too hard, the universe is going to drain your water bottle." "That's ridiculous," Vanessa said. "And yet accurate," Jordan pointed out. "And yet accurate," Vanessa agreed, smiling. 5 years after that first training session, Vanessa sat in Dr. Harding's office for what had become a monthly check-in rather than crisis management. They talked about work challenges and relationship dynamics and the ongoing process of maintaining balance. "You've come a long way," Dr. Harding observed, "from the person who walked in here 5 years ago convinced that rest was weakness and vulnerability was failure. That's profound growth." "It doesn't always feel profound," Vanessa said. "Sometimes it feels like I'm constantly catching myself before I fall back into old patterns." "That's exactly what growth looks like," Dr. Harding said. "Not perfection, but awareness and course correction. You notice when you're slipping, and you adjust. That's the skill that matters most." "The water bottle helps," Vanessa admitted, then laughed at how absurd that sounded. "Tell me about the water bottle," Dr. Harding prompted, even though they'd discussed it many times before. "It's like a barometer for my stress levels," Vanessa explained. "When I'm taking care of myself, it's just a normal bottle. When I start pushing too hard and ignoring my needs, water starts disappearing. It's the most bizarre feedback mechanism imaginable, but it works. And you're okay with that? With not having a complete scientific explanation?" "I've learned to be okay with it," Vanessa said. "Some things don't need to be completely understood to be useful. That's been a hard lesson for me, but an important one." That evening, Vanessa and Jordan hosted dinner for their closest friends, Simone and her partner, 2 couples from Jordan's studio community, and Marcus, who'd become a good friend beyond his role as Vanessa's trainer. They sat around the table in Vanessa and Jordan's apartment, eating and laughing and sharing stories. Tell them about the haunted water bottle, Simone said at one point, because she loved this story and never tired of hearing reactions. Vanessa and Jordan exchanged a glance. Then Vanessa told the story once more. The disappearing water, the video evidence, the gradual understanding that her body was trying to communicate what her conscious mind refused to acknowledge. "That's the most insane thing I've ever heard," one of Jordan's friends said. "And also kind of beautiful. Like your subconscious loved you enough to break physics to get your attention." "That's one way to interpret it," Vanessa said, smiling. "Is the bottle still haunted?" someone asked. "Only when I need it to be," Vanessa replied, which got laughs, but was also completely true. As the evening wound down and friends started leaving, Vanessa stood at the kitchen counter washing dishes while Jordan dried and put them away. It was a comfortable domestic routine they'd developed, working in tandem without needing to talk, just existing together in companionable silence. "Happy?" Jordan asked after a while. Vanessa considered the question. 5 years ago, she would have measured happiness by achievements and metrics and goals met. Now she measured it differently, by the quality of her relationships, the sustainability of her lifestyle, the sense of being grounded in herself rather than constantly striving for some impossible standard. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm happy." "Good," Jordan said. "Me too." He kissed her temple, and they finished the dishes together, and the water bottle sat on the counter completely full and utterly normal, which was exactly how it should be. 7 years after that first training session, where Vanessa had told Jordan to keep it professional, they stood in the Foundation Fitness Studio, now expanded to 3 times its original size, celebrating the space's 5th anniversary. Jordan gave a short speech thanking his team and clients for building a community focused on holistic wellness rather than just physical performance. Vanessa watched from the side, proud and grateful, and still slightly amazed that her life had transformed so completely from that moment of crisis when water started disappearing from sealed bottles. That impossible phenomenon had been a gift, she'd come to understand. A wake-up call, her subconscious's last-ditch effort to save her from destroying herself. After the celebration, when the studio had cleared out and they were cleaning up, Jordan said, "I have something for you." He handed her a small box wrapped in simple paper. Vanessa opened it to find a new water bottle, sleek, stainless steel, with an inscription etched on the side. "Sometimes the impossible is exactly what we need." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Jordan, I know you still use the old one," he said, "and that's fine. But I wanted to give you this as a reminder that even when things seem impossible or don't make sense, there's usually meaning underneath. You taught me that. Your haunted water bottle taught us both." Vanessa hugged him tightly, overcome with gratitude for this man who'd seen her at her worst and hadn't run, who'd helped her rebuild into someone stronger and softer simultaneously, who understood that growth was messy and non-linear and beautiful. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for not keeping it professional." Jordan laughed. "Best decision I ever made." They left the studio together, the new water bottle in Vanessa's hand and the old one sitting on the shelf in Jordan's office, a strange artifact from a strange time, a reminder of transformation and trust and the unexpected ways people find exactly what they need. And if, occasionally, when Vanessa pushed too hard or ignored her needs for too long, water mysteriously disappeared from sealed containers, well, that was just her body's way of saying, "Pay attention." And Vanessa had finally learned to listen.